You're listening to the Digital Deep Dive, where we tackle the newest trends, strategies, and pain points shaping growth across the digital landscape. From Amazon and D2C to international expansion, join our host and e-commerce leaders across multiple industries for in-depth discussions on how to maximize your brands in the digital arena. Now, here's your host, Aaron Conant.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Digital Deep Dive podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Conant, and today we're going to tackle an area that's, on a lot of people's minds right now, and that is the side of fulfillment. So as we've seen, digital commerce grow over the past, 2-3 years exponentially, this fulfillment side, right, is something that's straining organizations across the board. We have a lot of internal, the internal logistics team that you have is used to pulling large orders, right? And doing full truckloads, LTL. And now they're forced to, in a lot of cases, do individual pick, pack, ship. That can mean updates to, not only your ERP system, but your warehouse and everything else. And so we got a friend, of the network, Dave Glick here, comes highly recommended from other people in the network as well, and is over at Flex. And so just ask him to jump on and help educate us with best-in-class practices in this space as a whole. And so, Dave, if you want to jump in with a brief intro on yourself, Flex, that would be awesome. And then we can kind of get into the meat of it. Sound good?
That sounds great. Thanks for having me on, Aaron. This is Dave Glick. I was at Amazon for 20 years, starting as a junior IT project manager and finishing as VP of Fulfillment and Transportation Systems. And so there was lots of stuff in between there, but I left about 4 years ago to retire. And after a year, I found I was bored. Actually, after 3 months, I found I was bored. So I went back looking for work and eventually found Flex. And I've been here about 3.5 years. And what Flex does is, if you think about the digital cloud, it used to be that if you wanted to start a company, you had to build your own data center or work with a co-location facility to rent some racks for long-term. And then AWS came along and Azure, and they said, spin up whatever capacity you need, use it and spin it down. And so we started thinking about how to do that for the physical world, for warehousing. And so again, if you think about what you could do to ship your products, you either had to build your own fulfillment centers. They called them distribution centers, and Amazon came along and they added this fulfillment centers, or you could go to a 3PL who would want you to pay them a bunch of money up front and sign a 3 to 5 year contract. And the idea behind Flex is you shouldn't have to have any long-term commitments or upfront capital to run a warehousing business, whether it be fulfillment, distribution, or just storing stuff. So we think of ourselves as the physical internet or the physical cloud.
Awesome. So when we were chatting before, there was those 3 parts that you were breaking down for me, which were fulfillment, distribution, and capacity. How people need to be looking at their business as a whole. And I'd love to kind of pick apart each of those and how they play and how people should be thinking about them to growing their e-commerce business as a whole. Is that a good place to start, you think, for the conversation?
That's a great place to start. And I'll do it backwards: capacity, distribution, and fulfillment. And so if you think about warehousing, you can do three things with warehouses, probably more. The way we think about it is you can store stuff. And we've had companies who, bought 500,000 square feet worth of, call it drills, cordless drills, and they need someplace to store it. They got a great deal, but they need 500,000 square feet to store it as they bleed down that inventory. And they don't want to sign a 5-year lease for that, or a 5-year contract, because they figure they have 1 year of cover. And so we've been able to help folks do that. Distribution, pallets come in, pallets go out, you're replenishing stores, you're replenishing your distribution centers. We had a customer who had a whole network of regional distribution centers, and then they had manufacturing plants upstream of that. What they found is that the distribution centers are getting too full, and so they were storing the manufactured product on the dock, which was taking space where they could manufacture more product. And so they asked us to build another tier upstream, basically a cross-dock facility upstream of their regional distribution centers. So we're able to do that. And again, no upfront capital and no long-term contracts. So, if you're a seasonal business, you may pay us more in March and April where you're staging water or potato chips or whatever before the summer months. and then bleed that down and then shut it down for the second half of the year. And so that's a totally different paradigm than signing a 5-year contract that you're locked into. And finally, what we think is potentially the most exciting, and where I came from, was fulfillment. And what we've seen over the last 5 years, or at least the last 3.5 since I've been at Flex, is that all of the big CPG companies and retailers want to have an e-commerce strategy. Many of the brands said, "Okay, what's our e-commerce strategy? Let's hire a category leader from Amazon to be VP of e-commerce, and they're going to sell more stuff through Amazon." But Amazon, takes a bunch of money from you to do that. And so we found that many brands are trying to figure out how to go direct to consumer, and the folks who are leading that charge, the VP of e-commerce or otherwise, are often on the brand side or on the merchandising side. And they're like, how do we grow this business? And then it's secondary to think about how do we fulfill products if we are able to sell them on our own website rather than Amazon. And so Flex is able to help those companies as well.
When you look at it, then is there a make or break point on a dollar figure? Because I think where a lot of people in the CPG space run into an issue is the market, the actual basket size. Until it seems to be like if it hits $30, that it's really tough to do direct to consumer as a whole. How do you see that space? Is there a dollar figure in your mind where you kind of advise like, hey, if your shopping cart only gets to $15, probably not worth it?
Yeah, totally. It's true. If you think your fulfillment costs are going to be, $5, $7, $9, depending on what transportation rates you have. And so if you have a 20% margin, you need to be at $35 just to break even. And if you're not putting multiple things in a box, like at Amazon, if you put 3 items in a box, you can have lower ASPs because that adds up to a big AOV, right? Big average order value. If you are a brand who's selling one thing, it has to be expensive enough that you have enough gross margin to cover delivery. And I'm always scratching my head when I see, these surveys that said, 93% of CPG companies want to have a direct to consumer offer, in 2 days, or, 63% think they should be doing same day. And what I have seen is that nowhere near that are actually doing even 2-day shipping, having an offer, let alone doing same day. And if you think about it's a hard problem, right? Because you could set up oldspice.com, right? And you could try to sell through oldspice.com, but who would ever go to oldspice.com if they can go pick up their Old Spice at Amazon and have it there in 2 days? And I don't know what the solution is. I know what the solution for the shipping side is, but from a brand management and from starting your own direct to consumer practice, independent of Amazon or independent of Walmart.com, seems like a hard business.
Yeah. Do you see, retailers today pushing that down, where brands for them to fulfill?
Yeah, we are seeing sort of drop ship type models, and Amazon calls it Amazon Direct Connect, I think, or Amazon Direct Shipping, Amazon something. But their drop ship program is called. Do you know what it's called? ADP, something like that. ADF, Amazon Direct Fulfillment.
Yeah.
Sorry, they've got a whole program with a name and everything. But Amazon's outbound, and sorry, I keep talking about Amazon, but that's sort of the vast majority of direct to consumer shipping is from Amazon. But Amazon's outbound is highly optimized to send things that are about the size of a bread box to your house and not take up too much storage in their warehouse, and fast moving items they love. As you get down to the tail and you've got sort of the stadium size ketchup, mustard, and mayonnaise, Amazon doesn't want to store that in their warehouse, and it's high shipping costs. And so if you can reduce a touch and ship direct to the customer, you may be better off for those sort of bulkier items that are slow moving.
So how should brands be thinking about it? How do you have it segregated? Is it the Amazon piece and then the direct to consumer piece, and then those are two different? Or are you thinking brands are thinking about it holistically? Now, we hear a lot of talk about omni-channel, uni-channel, everything, looking at it holistically. But kind of what I'm hearing from you is, yeah, to a certain extent, but there's a certain category. And if your sell price of your cart is under $35, drive them to a retailer, right? Besides, you have all the, executive teams now, like, we need direct to consumer. I heard it. I sat it out on a plane next to somebody. They're telling me how awesome it is. And so we need to go do it. But there also needs to be that check and the financial analysis run on the back end. Like, are you taping $5 to the top of everything that goes out? Like, how do you kind of advise brands to take a look at it?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing to always do is look at the unit economics, and can you make money doing this at scale? And you don't even have to make money doing it at small time. So if you start out and you've got a transportation contract that charges you $12 a unit, but you know that if you can get to 1,000 units a day, or 2,000 units a day, or 10,000 units a day, you can do it for $5 a unit. One of the things we did at Amazon was talk about the entitlement. And so you can start out losing money, but at scale, you don't want to lose a lot of money. And so looking at the unit economics at scale is the first place to start, because if it's a non-starter, don't waste your time. What Flex does is allows you to experiment with these things. So instead of having a multi-million-dollar 5-year contract with 3PLs to house your inventory in 3 to 5 nodes, you can have a 1-month contract with no upfront costs, or 1 month or 3 months, or basically month to month. But you can say, I'm going to try to put my potato chips close to customers and drive traffic to that and see if I can make money. Or I'm going to try to sell flats of Campbell's soup, because you sell 24 cans of Campbell's soup, the economics might start working for you, as opposed to selling 1 can at a time. And so trying different methods to see, based on what you have in your spreadsheet, does it pencil with AOV and the unit economics, or how do you make that pencil, and then can you execute on it without a huge upfront cost from the warehousing side? I think that's where we're a differentiator.
Yeah. So then, the difference then, if you want to break it down from Amazon, how they view it versus a traditional 3PL versus the model you have, as people are, it's just a high area of interest right now, as people are trying to figure out, like, how do I get my product to the end consumer? Another piece that I want to tackle after we go through that is just coming top of mind, as you mentioned, like warehousing space and how people should think about it from this standpoint. Is I'm talking to a lot of companies right now, on a weekly basis, more and more are reaching out because they have a lot of inventory. We've seen, people over-index on a buy just a little bit originally to get enough to go through Q4 so that they don't run out in Q4 like they have the past couple of years. And then with the slowdown in purchase behavior, all of a sudden that, 6 to 8 months of inventory is turned into 12 months. So I want to make sure that we capture that as well, because I have a lot of brands looking to say, well, what do I do with this material? I can't ship it in anywhere. Like, we look at the inventory levels of TJ and even like a Big Lots or Target, everybody's over-indexed on inventory. So I guess 2 parts there. The first one is, how should people look at it, like the Amazon, FBA model versus a traditional 3PL versus kind of this like 4PL? I think we kind of call it, some people call it, your model is like a 4PL. Would love to hear like pros and cons of that across that landscape as people try to make a decision on what to do.
Yeah, certainly the simplest thing is to just use Amazon. And whether you're a merchant selling on FBA or whether you're a vendor selling first party, Amazon has the best fulfillment operation there is. For you, it's simple. You just sell them a full truckload and they take care of everything else. There's 2 downsides to it. One is you're paying Amazon a lot of money, which eats into your margin. And the second is, and when I was at Amazon, I didn't think this was a problem, but I know the brands did. They become more and more dependent on Amazon. And so if, Amazon, particularly for merchants, if Amazon, like their algorithm kicks you off the site, you've lost all your sales, or you've lost 80% of your sales. And so we're seeing people want to diversify out of Amazon. And so to me, Amazon FBA or first party is a great place to start. As you get bigger, you have the leverage to go to a 3PL who may be cheaper, probably won't be better, but they also give you some diversification away from Amazon, which is of concern, I think, to many brands.
100%, especially over the past 2 years, right? Where that was the only lever that could be pulled. And like, I think everybody's in a spot right now where they're over indexed on Amazon. They're rooting for a Walmart to win outside of the food category, CPG, normal grocery run. Like, there's not a lot of movement there. And so then it goes direct to consumer, but you're right. You have to handle the shipping aspect of it for sure.
Yeah. To answer the second part of your question about capacity, we love to do capacity deals. We found many retailers and brands are finding their supply chains disrupted. Maybe they missed the peak with their inventory on the water, or they did a big deal buy, like I said. They need some places to store those, and many of them are outgrowing their network, as they had during pandemic when everything was taking off. But traditionally, if you want to find a place to store something, they want you to sign a 3 to 5 year contract. And Flex says, if you need storage for 6 months, we'll store it for 6 months. And if it turns into 8 months, that's okay too. But much less batchy process. At Amazon, we always said batches are bad. Like when I was a kid growing up, we'd order K-Tel records. It'd be $8 for the record and $6.99 shipping and handling with 4 to 6 week wait. And what they would do is they would batch up orders. They'd run a TV ad. They'd batch up orders for 6 weeks, and then they'd pick those and send them really slowly to you via UPS or postal service back then. And at Amazon, we want to get rid of batches, right? Single piece flow improves quality, improves speed, improves cost. And so, taking an order and getting it out within half an hour is a much different thing than batching up orders for 6 weeks. And it's more expensive, but it definitely improves quality.
How does Amazon look at inventory right now? Like a few years removed, but a lot of people are looking at that space. And I don't know if you followed kind of the ups and downs of Amazon. There's not enough warehousing space, and then all of a sudden there's way too much warehousing space, and then now seems like they're selling off warehousing space, and there's not as much. And brands on the back end are trying to struggling to figure out how does Amazon look at this as a whole? Is there a long-term strategic plan here, or are they reacting to everything that's going on right now? Because I have a lot of brands that got, very, very small POs post Prime Day. They had massive Prime Days with the discounts they gave, but then there was no follow-up massive POs to replenish. Don't know if you have any insight there.
I don't have any insight to the last few months post Prime Day or pre-Prime Day. Over time, Amazon has always said, we have to build a plan to make sure that we don't constrict demand and we don't deliver late to customers. Like tenet one was like, we have to have enough capacity to deliver to customers, which is different than other companies, right? They say, what can we afford to spend? And Amazon would say, what do customers need? And so it's completely logical that 2020, 2021, Amazon was struggling from capacity. The Prime promise struggled. And so they said, we have to keep building and we got to get ahead of this thing. And so, they built to the plan of, if this continues, what are our customers going to need? It turned out, it's not clear anybody could have predicted, and certainly most people didn't. We'd have a war in the Ukraine, that the Fed would become hawkish, that the supply chain, mess in LA would continue. And all of those things have constricted demand. And so my friend used to run forecasting, and he would say, the forecast is right, it's the demand that's wrong.
That's like another whole episode, Amazon forecasting, which everybody, it's the bane of the existence of many an Amazon account manager.
Totally.
Who's asked for a forecast.
Hard. Telling the future is hard. So I always try to stay away from forecasting.
Yeah.
But yeah, Amazon had to build to the high forecast. And my thought is like, this is not a supply problem. This is not a cost problem. It's a demand problem that they're not growing as fast as they thought they would. But if you think about, they're trying to sell off 10 million square feet. That's like 2% of their capacity. And so if they can grow 2% next year, which by the way, they didn't last quarter, right?
Yeah.
If they can grow retail business 2%, they will fill all that capacity. And so, as much as the media likes to play out, oh, they're overbuilt, and as much as they're, saying we've had $4 billion of extra costs, whatever, we've seen they were able to bring down their labor, I think 10% over the last quarter. And, they will grow out of this problem.
No, super interesting. That's a cool perspective too, because you're right. The media gets a hold of it, and all of a sudden they're way, they're 30% overbuilt. And now they're 20% underbuilt. But brands are just trying to figure it out as a whole. I mean, at the same time, I think it's the hardest time it's ever been, for marketers. Obviously for e-commerce people who've, it's really going back 10, 15 years for the most veteran of us out there, that with everything that's going on, not just here geopolitically across the world and everything, supply chain, inflation, recession, to try to forecast right now is just incredibly difficult. And then on top of that, to just have all this, the goods you ordered, 9 months ago, all hit right now. Oh no, it's a struggle. It's trying to help brands.
If you think about the target inventory and orders brands are making, there's 4 inputs, sort of two plus two. There is the forecasted demand and the standard deviation around that. How tight can you forecast? And then there's the vendor lead time or replenishment lead time, and how tight can you forecast around that? And so one of the things that Flex does is allows brands to store inventory near to customers, and whether that's direct to consumer customers by building a multi-node network and doing direct fulfillment, or it's near their number one customer, Amazon, near their IXD cross-dock nodes. So you can't control forecasting standard deviation, right? Forecasting's hard. You can control vendor lead time. And so if you're able to move quickly and replenish from a warehouse in the US in hours or days rather than in months, which you'd have to do to replenish from China, you're able to take advantage when Amazon says, send us as many, when they want to lift the caps and they send you a big PO, or for the FBA sellers, allow you to ship in a bunch of inventory, you're ready to respond to that before the caps come back down. And so I would tell brands to focus on reducing their vendor lead time because they don't control the demand side.
No, so it's an interesting evolution of strategy as a whole. I think it's just the next level. So we think about forward deployed inventory as a whole, and a lot of brands have started to look at that from the direct to consumer side, right? How do I match the customer expectation that Amazon has put out there that 1 to 2 day delivery is expected now? It's just standard. The only way to do that economically is to push the inventory you have as close as you can to as many people in the country as you can. And that's a rapid execution that's going on right now. They're looking for different partners to do that and help them do it. They realize, hey, just because I have a great warehouse, in Cleveland or, in Chicago, doesn't mean, it's still cheap to ship. Even if you can get it out the same day, it still might be $9 to $12 to ship it to California, killing your margin. And what you're saying is
3 to 7 day shipping. And 3 to 7 day shipping.
Right. But what you're saying is now the next level as well is, so you've thought about that from the direct to consumer side. You've thought about that, when somebody orders on a marketplace or from your direct to consumer site, but you're also talking about now replenishment of inventory. So you're thinking even on the B2B side, expectations are up across the board on when you as a vendor are going to get inventory in to the retailer as a whole. And so that's creeped up. I mean,
yeah. So, Amazon started with just fulfillment centers, and then they built this layer called IXDs. I don't know if your listeners know.
Tell us more. Yeah, tell us more about that.
Yeah. So there's hundreds of Amazon fulfillment centers all around, and so if you have, as a vendor, had to ship into hundreds of buildings, you wouldn't be able to do it. And then they came up with this idea of the inbound cross docks, IXD, which is a receive center. It does 2 things for them. One is they maybe have 10 of these. And so you can ask a vendor to ship into 10 nodes, big vendors. You can't ask them to ship into 200 nodes. And so that's thing A. The second is they are then able to...
Really quick. So does that reduce the number of POs that I'm getting underneath of my vendor account?
Totally. That means instead of getting 200 POs with 200 addresses, you're getting 10 POs with 10 addresses, or maybe even less.
All right.
So that's good for you as a vendor because you have to ship to a smaller number of nodes and get a smaller number of POs, and you can send bigger trucks. The second thing is it allows them to late bind, meaning that they can make the decision of where to place that inventory when it hits the IXD, not when they place the purchase order. And so that reduces their forecasting lead time. So they're much better at forecasting 2 or 3 days ahead than 2 or 3 weeks ahead. And so if they say, we know we're going to need this, but we're not sure what warehouse it needs to be in. So then at the last minute, when it shows up at the IXD, they can say, oh, we want 2 units in LA and 2 units in Seattle, rather than saying, I was going to send 4 units to LA. And the third thing is these warehouses or these receive centers, the IXDs, are optimized for receiving and only receiving. So it allows them to focus that process in relatively low capital buildings and saving the outbound in their high capital buildings with robots and so on, so that they can optimize the outbound buildings with robots and all the other capital sorters for one thing, and the receive centers for something completely different.
So if I'm a brand evaluating a 3PL right now, then, and Amazon is a huge customer, then having one close proximity to one of these IXPs is pretty much essential at this point in time, right? Because if you can get it there in 2 days, right, again, if you can get it there next day, right, you're helping Amazon optimize across the board as well and limit out of stocks on that side. It's almost essential at this point in time.
Totally. And, we did some work on, and we still are doing warehouses that are near IXDs. So you can stage inventory and you may be 20 miles down the road. And so you could have a 1 hour replenishment lead time or, maybe a 1 day replenishment lead time. Amazon has also opened up this new program, which no one's really sure of yet, but it's called AWD, Amazon Warehousing and Distribution, where they have low capital staging warehouses near their IXDs. So you can send your inventory there to be stored. And then, use Amazon transportation services to fulfill into the IXD or to move inventory into the IXD. They take it from there. Again, that's probably a good program. Again, increases your dependency on Amazon. So we like the idea of a sort of neutral third party, us, who can, distribute your goods into Amazon or to Walmart or to Target, or send them direct to consumer. And our warehouse management system is exactly what you said, which is omni-channel, which allows you from a single pool of inventory to either, ship pallets into Amazon or Walmart or Target or wherever else, and ship eaches to customers.
Super interesting. So are there any other next level tidbits that you see evolving as a whole? Right? Because I don't think people 3 years ago, 4 years ago were saying, hey, in the evaluation process of my 3PL, in 20% of my business with Amazon, make sure that they have a fulfillment center within, 120 miles, or warehouse within 120 miles of an Amazon, IXD. That wasn't on the checklist, and now it has to be on the checklist. Are there other things that have to be on the checklist?
Yeah, I think generally, if you want to understand operations and you don't have a lot of time, all of the money is in the arcs. If you think about supply chain as a series of nodes and arcs, and nodes are distribution centers and fulfillment centers, and arcs are ocean carrier, air freight, and trucks. All the money, you spend about 5 times as much money on transportation as you do on warehousing. So all the money's in the arcs, not the nodes. But the way you reduce the money you spend in arcs is by putting the nodes in the right place. And so by putting inventory close to its end state, whether that be with a consumer or with Amazon's IXD or something else or Walmart stores, putting inventory close to the customer is going to save you money. And lots of folks get hung up on the FC variable cost. What's the cost per pick? What's the cost per pack? But those costs are dwarfed by the transportation costs. So I think if I left your listeners with one thing, I would say focus on minimizing transportation cost. And the way you do that is by putting inventory close to the customers. And if you know one thing about operations, that's what you should know.
But it's the simplest, right? We like hard numbers at the end of the day, right? And the easy thing to do is say, all right, a pick costs this much, storage costs this much, pack, insert whatever it is, I can get to an exact number. Whereas depending on how far it's going and the shape of each product, does it dim out? Does it not? That's completely variable, which we're not as comfortable with, right? And so
that's some of the magic of FBA, right? Is they say, just send us your inventory and we'll give you, we will contract the transportation for you, and we will give you a cost, whether it's bought with super saver shipping or 2-day shipping or 1-day shipping, that doesn't matter to you. This is what you're going to pay us to warehouse it and ship it. That's a great thing about FBA or about shipping through Amazon. It's relatively simple, but costly. The other thing to think about is to do like 2-day shipping to customers. You probably need 5 buildings around the country. You need something in Newark, something in Ohio, something in Reno, Texas, and Atlanta, something like that. And if you go to a DHL or a Geodis, one of the big 3PLs, they're going to say, okay, for each of those buildings, we're going to need $1 million of upfront capital to rack it out or to put automation in or robots or whatever. And we're going to need you to sign a 5-year lease. And so you may be $10 million into the project before you ever ship a unit. That scares people away, right? That's a high capital constraint. So then if you come to Flex, we can say no capital up front, no long-term commitments. So we can take the capital out of the D2C project. And then the next thing is people are like, man, I usually just ship to one node in Ohio, right? And from there ship 3 to 7 days. So I have to redo all my systems or, update my spreadsheets more likely to figure out how to ship to 5 different warehouses and keep those replenished. And, that's the complexity. That's sort of the math problem behind the physics problems. And, we work with some of our customers to do that inventory placement calculation and figure out where you should put your inventory.
No, so are there things across the board that you're excited about over the next, year to 2 years, things you see popping up? I don't know, maybe it's robotics. I don't know.
I've worked with robotic systems and, we put in high capital sorters in 1999, where we hired a bunch of people from Walmart to design facilities for us. And they designed great automated facilities to do full case replenishment to stores. But it turns out we weren't doing full case replenishment to stores. We were doing eaches to customers. And so it took us, 5-6 years to dig our way out of that. The latest example of robotics going wrong is Elon, when they set up the Model 3 line in the Fremont factory in Tesla, they put, we don't want any humans involved, all robots. And they ended up having a bunch of humans assembling cars in the parking lot under a tent because they built the wrong robotics. And so unless you have big scale, so you can amortize those robotics across a lot of units, and you really, really, really understand your processes, robotics is not the droid you're looking for. You're going to want to scale with humans until you deeply understand your processes. And then you can start saying, how would robots do this better or faster or cheaper?
Yeah, it's funny this. I always like the analogy around AI, right? AI is fantastic and it's driving your car until somebody is, as a joke, spray painted the 35 into an 85 as you're going around a curve and you're accelerating through the curve and jump over with your Tesla. But no, awesome. Any key takeaways for brands as we kind of wrap up and get to the end of this episode? You're sitting in a brand shoes, and I know you guys deal with a lot of them. And thanks for your time today. I mean, you guys come highly recommended from a bunch of people in the network. So thanks for jumping on and kind of explaining some of this, mysterious space for a lot of people as well, as a whole. But, a few key takeaways that you have for people that they should, if they're taking notes here.
Yeah. If you were going to do direct to consumer, you need a plan. And the plan has to go deep into the unit economics, understand if you can make money. That's thing one. Thing two is if you don't want to write a $10 million capital request to your boss or to the chief supply chain officer to stand up a 5-node network for 5 years, Flex is a way to ease your way into that. Think of it like AWS versus building your own data center. And third is, you need to put inventory close to customers. That is the thing that is going to make you successful from an economic point of view, because you can't be paying UPS to fly your inventory all over the country meet a 2-day promise.
Awesome. Well, love it, Dave. Thanks so much for your time today. Thanks for everybody for listening in here. Just love going down this digital journey together. So again, enjoy the episode. Upcoming, we're going to cover other topics that are popping up across the network. Hope everybody has a fantastic day. Thanks for listening in. Everybody take care.